Welcome back, Kathleen. Great to see you. Great to hear you. And I love your storytelling and songwriting. It's great to hear. The first. I mentioned the fact that you achieved so much and then took a breather. And I loved your line where you say, "We bought a rock and roll dream and it was total crap."
Yeah. I mean, some days it was. Well, I think, it's that thing where when the show is on and the lights are on and the room is dark and the energy is magic, it's hard to imagine it's hard to imagine what the venue looks like when you walk in and it's 2:00 in the afternoon and you haven't eaten a salad in 6 weeks and the floor of the venue you're about to play in is sticky and it smells like puke. That happens. And
You don't need to explain. We know.
This is a particularly nice venue.
Yeah.
Everyone is very nice here. No, and it was more than that. I think I was sort of unprepared for years of putting myself in a very vulnerable position all the time.
Yeah, let's be candid. When you're going to write honest, heartfelt songs and then play them for strangers night after night, hoping that they like them and that you're subjecting yourself to their judgment all the time, that's a vulnerable spot. That's scary stuff.
Yeah, and I started really young. I wasn't a Disney teenage star or anything, but I was, I don't know if, I think I was telling you earlier backstage that I remember the first time I played eTown. It was over at the Boulder Music Theater.
Boulder Theater, yeah.
Boulder Theater. And I distinctly remember it because we pulled up to the side door to load in, and there was a man standing at the stage door with a picture of me, and he wanted me to sign it. And that was so weird to me. I was like, well, why? He's been standing here waiting for that? Get a life. It's just me. I'm not that great. What are you talking about? So, even just...
That was the first time?
Yeah, And
Yeah,
I remember,
wow.
I played David Letterman the week my record came out the first time.
Yeah.
I went from playing in my local music scene to seeing a lot of things, which is an extraordinary experience, but it's a huge learning curve when you're young.
And it is true. I think everybody should know that you've been on David Letterman's show more often than you've been on eTown, but only slightly.
Well, don't
No.
retire. You might beat him.
Yeah, there's still time. No, we all fell in love with your first record and just stayed in touch after that. And you went through a lot. As you say, you got started early, and next thing you know, you're married and divorced, and other things are happening. Just life was happening quickly for you. And when you unplugged, and you didn't just sit around. Not only did you get not one but two dogs, but you opened a coffee shop.
I did, yeah. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was my second husband tells me that, he's like, when we first met, he said, "That's so extraordinary. You were in a really dark, low place in your life trying to figure out what was next, and you just threw yourself into a new project." And it is amazing, and I'm very proud of myself. I don't think it's not that extraordinary, but maybe I'm just not very good at sitting still.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what led you there, and I think there is actually a deeper connection because, as I understand it, your first gig was working in a coffee shop, and when you were young, even younger.
Yeah, it's where I started because I finished high school barely, and I had been in the last few years of my high school, I've been busking, taking the bus downtown, busking in downtown Ottawa. And I just wanted to become part of a music scene. I didn't know if it existed, but that's what I wanted to do. So I got a job as a barista at Starbucks, which was at the time in downtown Ottawa, one of the cool coffee shops that you get a job in. And I loved it. It was a really great place to start my young adult life and had people looking out for me. And then, of course, musicians came into the coffee shop, and that was kind of my launch pad.
Yeah, let's face it, singing is a way to create community. Serving coffee is a way to create community. So it's not a weird thing. It's not like you said, "Oh, I'm going to become a nuclear physicist now." So
I know. And
you could have done that.
I did work at Starbucks at the great era where, do you remember when if someone screwed up your drink or they thought you had waited too long, you got like a coupon for a free drink? They're like, next one's on us. One time, then there were these booklets of like free drinks. Well, one time the Cowboy Junkies came in and I was a huge Cowboy Junkies fan and I was like making their drinks and I just took the entire booklet and I just gave it to like Michael Timmons. I just said, I love you. And I just gave him the whole thing. I'm sure if the manager had seen me, I would have been fired, but
Oh, that's good-hearted.
Yeah.
That's good-hearted.
No.
But it's a lot of work to run a business, and coffee shops start early in the day. It's completely antithetical to a musician's life cycle and circadian rhythm, right?
Yes.
You're staying up late when you're playing gigs, and now you're getting up at 6 to go open a coffee shop.
Yeah, the dog gave me a 6-month learning curve on that. I was up early walking with her.
Yeah.
But, I also loved it. I don't really still think I'm a morning person, but I really did love sinking my teeth into something and building a place. And it turned into something magical. Like when I opened the coffee shop, it was on a shoestring budget and mostly just money that I had made it playing music. Thank God. And opened this little place. I bought some nice equipment and I went from like 2 employees and 5 years later, we were almost at peak summertime. We were 25 people.
Wow.
In our 5th year, we grossed $1 million in sales. Like it was one of those like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Like there was just a need for it. And we became Town Hall and it was really special. And I'm really proud of it.
That's really cool. And I don't need to belabor this point, but you also during this time came to grips with the fact that you'd been depressed. You'd been clinically depressed, and you managed to navigate that as well during that time.
Yeah, it really coincided with finishing the record. Well, it really coincided with when my ex-husband and I broke up. Divorce was maybe I really underestimated how difficult that was going to be, I think. And I made a new record and I think I just was not well. And I had turned 30. There were a lot of big life things maybe I had not confronted. And so I found myself just feeling really eroded. My hair fell out and I was crying all the time and I just didn't know what was wrong with me. And it took a while. And I'm mostly relaying this openly because getting through depression was actually easy. It was the period leading up to being diagnosed that was actually incredibly hard because I didn't know what was wrong with me.
Right. Terrifying.
Yeah, it's terrifying. And I'm sure anyone who's been through it can relate to that. Yeah.
Or anyone who's going through that not knowing section of their lives.
Yeah, and hopelessness is really when you get to a place where you don't see a way out of the way that you're feeling is actually the most awful thing because there's actually a solution, but none of it is in front of you. You just don't have the tools to see it.
Well, you are learning all the things. You're getting all the lessons. You're learning all the things. You did close you sold your coffee shop.
Yes, I did learn that even though I grossed $1 million, I netted negative $100,000. So get out of the coffee business. Yeah.
See, accounting, you learned accounting skills.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then you put a record out just exactly in 2020, which was, you couldn't tour, you couldn't do promotion, you couldn't do things like this. Just because it was crazy COVID shutdown times.
Yeah. And, I had 2 jobs. One was music and one was operating a small food business. And both were like, see you later.
Right.
Yeah. I've made some bad choices, life choices.
Those choices were made for you. But the bottom line is that you persevered and now you've got new songs. I know you made a record of covers that's relatively new and you got another batch of songs percolating. You've migrated to Florida. That's a big step.
Yeah, it's a 3-day drive actually. It's a big step. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, we don't have to. I'm just saying. I think it's a life change, and I was surprised when I learned it. I just think of you as so thoroughly Canadian.
Well, I always will be.
Yeah. And like I say,
we have Canada has a very strong historical tether to Florida. Lots of us survive winters long enough, and we now call ourselves snowbirds. You know, yeah.
And when you get down there, do you feel like a tourist, or do you feel like a resident now? Are you like involved in your community down there and kind of connected as a person who lives in Florida? That's like
slowly.
Yeah. I would proceed with caution.
Yeah. Well, I would say, thankfully, I won't be. I love it down there.
Oh, cool.
And I think, the one great gift that I've had in my life, my dad was in the Foreign Service. We traveled a lot when I was a child and into my teenage years. And I always longed to be rooted at home. And Ottawa was this place that I had this incredible tether to, and I felt very, part of my identity living overseas was that I was Canadian. So I have a very strong feeling about that and nostalgia for that. But I realized that maybe this idea of that I was supposed to be rooted in one place just was not going to happen. Yeah. And what I realized actually through owning the coffee shop, and thankfully this was an extension of my upbringing, was that people actually, listening to people and finding out that your perception of what you think they might believe in or what they think is important is actually maybe not true. You just need to listen. Mm-hmm. And I find that to be true about the people I've met in Florida.
Yeah, totally.
I find that to be true about my neighbors in Ottawa. And
it's true in music too.
It's true in music too.
I mean, the whole thing works better when you listen.
Yeah. And I did something for my community, not realizing I was doing something for my community when I opened that business. I gave young people jobs, and I got to pay it forward because someone did that for me when I was a young teen or a mid-teen. And I know that I gave them an experience that they'll take with their lives and hopefully, look back and cherish those years. I have no insecurities about the fact that I've done good work in my community. And if I want to be in Florida and go to the beach in fucking February, I'm going to do that. And my dog's cool with it too.
Listen, I'm not judging you. It was 5 degrees this morning here, so yeah. Well, I also just think that that being self-employed and self-driven is not for everybody. And in the arts, it's especially tough because there's no rules, there's no parameters, there's no, you can have mentors and you can have guidance, but at the end of the day, what are you going to conjure up personally based on your skills and your experience? And what are you going to make from that? And that's either wonderfully gratifying or terrifying, depending on the day.
Yeah, my dad was a public servant, and my brother has followed in his footsteps. And he did say to me a few years ago, like, I really just don't understand how you have built a life and make a living. Like, some people don't understand entrepreneurial self-employment. And the problem is that I'm just so stubborn. I couldn't work for anybody. Like, I'm unemployable.
Yeah, I think I am too.
Yeah.
But so far, so good. Here we are. And, I've just got to ponder your choice because you are actually going to the beach. And I need to work on that.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm so glad you came back. It's nice to see you again. It's great to hear some new songs. And let's hear some more music.
Okay.
You're
Thank
up for
you.
it.
Thank you, Nick.
Welcome back,
Thank
Kathleen.
you. So nice to be back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Kathleen Edwards.